visit, especially after now I've made new friends in Ireland. I would put it higher on my list to visit.
Well worth a look for sure.
Absolutely.
As you know, it might be easy to Ireland. It's sometimes very difficult to leave.
Here's a Yang Dan from Huawei, Ireland.
Oh wow!
Hi, Yang Dan.
Very high-tech background. Hello. Nice to meet you.
Yang Dan is from Huawei Research Center, Ireland.
Okay, interesting.
Very good.
Nice.
Nice to meet you.
Is that affiliated with any university in Ireland? Is that affiliated with any university in Ireland?
Hello.
Hello.
President Chen and everyone. Yes,
hello.
I'm Yang from Huawei Island. I'm taking the Chief Operation Officer. Chen Wei is a good friend of Huawei. So today I'm very happy to join us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yang Dan.
Nice to meet you.
I think we're just waiting for one guest, then we're all ready to go there. We're just waiting for our colleagues in Munster Technological University, then we can ready to go. We have 45 seconds.
Lovely.
Okay.
Precision.
Like BBC or CC launch.
Yes, with the bomb.
Military operation.
So how many we should have? 10 or 4 or 5?
The what?
How many people we should be here together?
We should be 10 people together. Actually,
okay.
9 people together. So Andrew is my technical support. So he's to make sure all the technical background is working perfectly.
But I can only see 4 of us.
All right.
I can see 6.
I can see 9.
Okay.
I can see 9.
Oh, no,
9.
Xiaoming is here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Right.
10 in China. 10 is perfect.
And I see Angel, the John.
Yeah, he's our technical guy. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think let's just kick off. I think maybe Michael is just he could be just a small delay here. So let's just kick off, guys.
Yeah.
So distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Happy Chinese New Year. 过年好.
Happy Chinese New
Year. Welcome to attend ICSATA Chinese New Year special, a virtual Chinese wine tasting evening. My name is Wen Chen. I'm the chairperson of Ireland-China Science and Technology Association. It's our great honor to be the host of our event today. Firstly, please allow me to introduce our key attending officials and guests today. Madame Wang Oujia, Head of Culture and Tourism, the Chinese Embassy to Ireland.
Hi, I'm Olga.
Councillor Declan Flanagan, Dublin City Council.
Ni hao.
Ni hao.
Ni hao.
Janet Wang, wine writer and the key presenter of our event today.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Hello.
Kevin Eacock, Irish wine expert, the moderator of the main part of our event today.
Hello, how are you? Great to see you all.
Great to see you.
Great to see you.
Liu Xiaoming, Director, Ireland Chinese Journal, and the media support of our event.
Nice to meet you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yang Dan, Chief Operation Officer, Huawei Ireland Research Center.
Thank you.
And Finbar Clary, my deputy chairperson, ICSATA.
Hello.
Huh?
So, hi guys. So Michael Loftus from the Monster MTU will be joining us shortly. So also we have our absence. Actually, yeah, Michael is joining us now, just in perfect time. Yeah. Hello, Michael. Hi, Michael.
Hey, Wen, how are you doing?
Good, good. Happy Chinese New Year to you.
And many a good year of the ox to you, Wen.
Thank you. And you just came in on perfect time. So we're just introducing everybody. So now let's welcome Michael Loftus, Vice President for External Affairs, Monster Technological University.
Hello, everybody. Delighted to meet you.
Michael.
Hey, Michael.
Hello, Michael.
So now we have all our key guests attending guests today. So there's an absence here from Mr. Alessandro Fazio, Head of a Competence Center on Technology Transfer, European Commission. He sent his apology as his mother-in-law was suddenly in hospital this morning, unfortunately. So let's wish her all well. Now, so for those who haven't heard of ICSATA, I'd like to give you a quick intro about us. ICSATA is a not-for-profit organization registered in Ireland in 2017. Since established, we've received strong supports from both the Irish and the Chinese governments. Based on the principle of innovation and win-win, the aim of ICSATA is to build an international platform to promote the overall collaboration between Ireland, Europe, and China, Asia, with a focus in the area of technology, trade, culture, and education, and also to assist both the Chinese and the Irish governments to promote the bilateral relationships at all levels. Today is the second day of the Chinese New Year, according to the lunar calendar. ICSATA is delighted to celebrate the Chinese New Year with you all together at this virtual wine tasting event. Leo Baraka, the tarnished and the Minister for Enterprise, Trade and Employment, specially sent his best wishes to our event. Also, a big thank you to all the government officials and the guests for your great support and attending our event today. This is not a formal business event. I just want to make sure that it's a party to celebrate the Chinese New Year. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy the show with your glass of wine. So cheers.
Yes.
Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers.
Chinese called ganbei.
Let's make it not
Just
campaign,
a sip, a sip. Drink as you're free. So now, our first guest is a busy lady who probably has been involving all the Chinese New Year celebration events in Ireland this year already. So now please welcome Madam Wang Ojia from the Chinese Embassy to Ireland to give us a short speech.
Thank you, Wen. And yes, I'm so happy to be here this evening. Good evening, everybody. My name is Ojia Wang, or we say, to make it simple, Ojia Wang. I'm head of the Culture and the Tourism Department in the Chinese Embassy. Today is the second day of the Lunar Chinese New Year. So first of all, I should say Happy New Year. In Cantonese, we say 恭喜发财, and in Mandarin, we say 拜年啦. That's means Happy New Year. Happy New Year of the Ox. So just as Wayne introduced, in recent days, I've been keeping very busy, working together with Dublin Chinese New Year Festival to organize a lot of events. I've got partners both in Ireland and in China as well. And I've successfully organized quite a few online celebration events of performing arts and visual arts. 3 of these events were streamed online live on RTE Culture in last week. So it was a very good opportunity for Chinese culture to reach more audience in Ireland. And thank you, Wen Chen, for inviting me to join you this evening. I'm not a wine drinker, but I'm very happy to share my feelings. I definitely believe there's no better time to take a look at the impact that wine has had on the celebrations of the holidays and on Chinese culture. Whether it be as a beverage to enjoy during the gathering or as a gift exchanged with visiting families and friends, alcohol serves as a method for people to express their good feelings. For many Chinese, wine is becoming the alcohol of option for this season. People has getting more and more love alcohol because they think alcohol has got a lot of benefits. First, they believe it's good for health. Just like my grandpa, he would like to have very little wine, small cup of wine every day. Say it's good for his heart. Yeah, so he believes, especially the red wine. And also people believe the color red, yes, is a symbol of happiness and joyfulness. And also people think that generally speaking, the wine is of quite a low alcohol content. So it's popular, everybody can accept. Of course, the adults, adults as a whole, it's a suitable drink for adults. Of course, the wine is a superior beverage option for meal pairings. So in China, especially during the festival time, the wine has become more and more popular. In the past time, the traditional people will drink baijiu, that's very spritz, or it's very high alcohol content. But nowadays, more and more people accept that would like to have wine to cheer, for a toast. So we all know the Chinese festival is a time of family gathering. The Chinese have a saying, it is not a celebration without alcohol. Alcohol is something that the celebrations are never without. It is integral to Spring Festival and to Chinese culture as well. So during this challenging time, when social distancing role should be continued to follow, to maintain. So I think today's event is a very good way to celebrate Chinese New Year. And at the same time, we can have a better knowledge about wine, particularly the Chinese wine Great War. So I think I can get a very good knowledge, better knowledge after today's event. So thank you all. So may I lift my glass to say 干杯? It's not a bottom up. It's just
Oh yeah.
Again, Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year. Cheers.
New Year.
New Year.
Excellent speech, excellent Ganbei. Thank you, Madame Wang.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Councillor Declan Flanagan. Councillor Flanagan is actively promoting the bilateral relationship between Dublin and the key Chinese cities in the past few years. He's been to China many times and was one of the first councillors to establish the training links between Dublin and Beijing. Now, please welcome Councillor Declan Flanagan to say a few words.
Thanks very much, Mr. Wen Chen, for the lovely introduction. Very nice indeed. I would like firstly to thank ICSATA and Dublin City Council for organising this unique virtual wine testing event, which really showcases Chinese wines. We are getting to know more and more about them and learn the history behind them. So it's fantastic. I would like to particularly compliment the work ICSATA has been doing in forging relationships between Ireland and China and the various key cities such as Dublin and Beijing. I wish our audience and distinguished guests a very happy and prosperous Chinese Lunar New Year in this year, the year of the ox. I hope it's a very good year for everyone. I would like now to take the opportunity to introduce our current Lord Mayor, Ms. Hazel Chu, who will say a few words via a pre-recorded speech. Again, I wish everyone a very happy New Year and cheers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Hi folks, Hazel Chu here, your Lord Mayor of Dublin City. Wanted to record a quick message to the festival organisers and attendees to say a big happy new year. Gong hei fa choi. I know it's been a very, very different year. It's been so challenging for so many and it's been so difficult. I hope that this year of the ox will bring us more stability and provide the strength to everyone to make sure that we move forward in these difficult times. Again, a big thank you to the organisers of this evening's events. And sorry I can't be with you myself, and I hope you have a great new year. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Flanagan, and then also Hazel Chu, the Lord Mayor of Dublin's warm messages. Now we are moving to the main part of the event today. Our key presenter tonight is a Cambridge alumna who started promoting Chinese wine and culture since 2012. She is the author of the Chinese Wine Renaissance, and she has appeared on BBC and Channel 4 on numerous occasions to present wine and culture, as well as running wine events for corporate and social occasions. She is presenting here tonight with our moderator, who is also a wine writer and expert from Ireland. So now let's welcome Janet Wang together with our moderator, Kevin Ecork.
Thank you very much. This is quite an honor for me to be here, to be honest. It's my very first opportunity to present wines from China. And from that point of view, thank you very much to ICSATA. Thank you very much to Janet for actually coming into us all the way from Stratford-on-Avon. It's a great thing about the world of wine. I've been in the Irish wine trade since 1984. At the time, there were very few people buying wine in Ireland. You had to sell beers and you had to sell spirits if you wanted to survive. By the time I left our retail, we had set up Ireland's first wine-only store with my two brothers. We had off licenses, we had bonded wine warehouse, we had distribution and import of wines from all over the world, and we distributed right across the whole of the country. For the last 10 years, I've been writing for magazines, Check Out Magazine and Hospitality Ireland especially. And for the last 2 years, I've been presenting a podcast on wine with wine makers 3 times a month, and that's going extremely well, which I'm very pleased to say, because it has a worldwide reach and an Irish reach all at the same time. Tonight we have the 2 wines of the Great Wall, and Janet is going to guide us through them in a little while. But you can never drink wine and you can never enjoy wine unless you have some context to put the wine into. And the context, certainly from my point of view, and what I'm really interested in hearing from Janet in the very beginning, is the history of where has this wine actually come from. It didn't just magically appear last year, and it didn't just magically appear out of the wine shop today. There's a history behind it. There's a reason why it was made, and that's where we should start. And if Janet can guide us through that to begin with, we can drink along the way, and you can add comments along the way, I'm sure, if you so wish. But at the same time, really, a little bit of history will kick us off to a very nice beginning. Janet, over to you.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Wen. And I'm so pleased to meet all the distinguished guests and all the friends in Ireland. I would definitely love to visit Ireland after this, now that I have made new friends in Ireland now. And Happy New Year. And as Kevin says, I would like to first set the scene for everybody while you're drinking the Great Wall wine or indeed any other wines, to have a brief overview of why China is now becoming a very exciting wine market, but also a wine producing region. So I will share some slides with you and we can have a brief tour of the Chinese history. So first of all, the first question we may ask, as Kevin and Wen said, I published a book called The Chinese Wine Renaissance. And perhaps the first question to ask, why Renaissance, right? A lot of people have not even heard about Chinese wine, let alone of a Renaissance, right? So I would like to introduce China to you as a new world wine region, but actually it's a new old world. A bit like Georgia, the Middle East, people are rediscovering those ancient wine regions. So they're called the new old world. And China is indeed also among those wine regions, which is just discovering and rediscovering its love for the grape wine in particular. So in fact, China has the oldest fermented beverage in the world, right? So the oldest wine found anywhere in the world is from Jiahu Neolithic site, and it's in Henan province. So this dates back to almost 9,000 years ago. And based on some scientific research, the wine itself is a mixture of grain wine, so it could be some kind of rice, but also there are fruit contents as well. And it could be wild grapes. So this could be actually grape wine, the oldest grape wine in the world. The fruit can be grapes, or it could be hawthorn. Hawthorn is also very widely grown in China. China has a very long history with wine for sure. But also, if you happen to want to get the book, I've put some reading references, page numbers for you to follow up as well along the way of my presentation. So the first mention of written records of grape is found in Book of Odes, 诗经. So 诗经 is a collection of first millennium BC poetry. And in this particular poem, it mentions that in the month of August, grapes are ready to be eaten. So at the moment, grapes were not really domesticated in China, in fact, but wild grapes were picked and eaten. But notice that it says that the ingredients that's used for making spring wine is actually grain, right? So there's a distinction between grapes. Grapes is for eating, and grains is for making wine, right? So that's why we have a much longer history of making grain-based, rice-based wines. And this concept of spring wine is interesting. So after the harvest, wine is made and then aged until around the spring festival time, i.e. around this time of the year, and it's taken out for celebration. And in particular, the celebration will be to celebrate the elderly, right? So we show respect to the elderly, and we give them wine to wish them longevity. So here, as Madame Wang was saying, a lot of people associate wine with health. And in fact, as far back as first millennium BC, we've already made this connection between wine and health. So wine for Spring Festival is given to the elderly to wish them longevity. And therefore, this health factor is certainly very important since the very beginning of our wine culture. So in the meanwhile, also in Europe, the European grapevine is starting to become domesticated to make wine, right? So while we've domesticated grains and making a lot more grain wine, in Europe, the grape is now being used for making grape wine. So this is circa 1500 BC in Europe. And fast forward to the Han Dynasty, the Silk Road. So this is around 2nd century BC. So the Emperor Han Wudi, Wudi of Han, decided to send an envoy to discover what's out there towards the west. They wanted to form certain alliances, military alliances, and establish trading relationships as well. So what was interesting is this area around Fergana on the Silk Road was the first record of grape wine being very abundant. And also the envoys eventually took back grape wine and also grapes as well, and the winemaking techniques from this area around Fergana. So the three key figures in this story is the emperor himself, Wudi of Han. So he commissioned this this expedition. Sima Qian was the historian, and it's thanks to him that we know of this story, because he recorded the journey of the envoys and what they brought back with them. And the envoy in question is Zhang Qian. So Zhang Qian actually made 2 expeditions. The first one wasn't terribly successful. He got captured and he had to escape, But the second time he was much more prepared, and he went out there and formed alliances and trading relationships. And he brought back a lot of very fascinating goods with him, one being the grapevine. And Wudi of Han actually became a winemaker himself. He was very, very interested in the grape wine, and he planted the vines around his palace and made grape wine with it as well. Yeah, so this is the records of the grand historian Shi Ji by Sima Qian. So here we have a very good record to say around Dayuan. Dayuan is the Fergana area. There are lots of wines made from grapes, and the emperor was the first to plant it as well. So that's written in Shi Ji. So this is the formal first record in Chinese history of the grape wine. And the Book of Han is also another very important ancient text of Han Dynasty history. So again, this is very interesting. So it says around Fergana, grapes are used to make wine, and also notice that they can be kept. So this concept of aging wine, right? So is already in practice. So people, wealthy families would cellar wines, and they would keep for over 10 years, right, decades, which is quite remarkable, because even to this day, we still associate the best wines as cellar-worthy wines, right? And as far back as 2nd century BC, they were doing the same. They were cellaring wines as well, and the wines were of the quality that can be aged. So meanwhile, in Europe, so Cato the Elder is also writing about viticulture and its association with medicinal qualities as well in his book on viticulture and farming. So at this time, grape wine was not widely available to the public. It was very much the preserve of the wealthy and the imperial family, really. So this made grape wine extremely exclusive. Even up till the end of the Han Dynasty, into the Three Kingdoms period, to the Emperor of Wei, which was the dynasty that followed the Three Kingdoms period. But I just want to highlight this because I think this is the best tasting note in Chinese history for sure. I think it really sums up very nicely what a good wine should be. So Emperor Emperor of Wei, notice that he wrote to all his medics. So again, clearly he considers wine to be health-giving. So this is what he tells his imperial doctors, right? He says wine, grapes in particular, grapes is sweet but not cloying. The wine is acidic but not sharp, cooling but not cold, long in taste, and abundant in juice. So I think this is a lovely way to describe what a nice and balanced wine should be. And he goes on to say, you get drunk quite easily, one inebriates well, yet sobers up easily, right? So very good. So I think this is a fantastic summary of why he loves wine and what a good wine should do for us. And if you don't know who Emperor of Wei is, you might play this game, computer game called Dynasty Warrior. So this period, the Three Kingdom period, is very famous in Chinese history, but maybe a lot of the younger generation, they know it, or internationally, the Three Kingdoms is more popular in the gaming world, right? So this is his character if you play Dynasty Warriors. And meanwhile, the oak barrel, circa 200 AD, has become the more popular means for storing and transporting wines. So prior to that, people were using amphoras and things which are made of ceramics to export wines, to transport wines. But the Romans noticed that actually oak barrels not only store wines very well, it's sort of antibacterial, etc. Wines can be preserved very well in oak, but also oak, the wood itself imparts pleasant dimensions, pleasant features to the wine, right? So oak barrels started to become the more popular means for storing and transporting wines. And now let's fast forward again to the Tang Dynasty. So this is sort of 7th to the 9th century. And the most famous character, I suppose, one of the most famous character of Tang Dynasty is the poet Li Bai. So even today, Tang Dynasty is most celebrated for its poetry, and Li Bai is at the pinnacle of Tang Dynasty poetry. And he was known to be drinking all the time, in-pause wine and out-pause poetry. And this particular poem, I just want to highlight a few things, which is very interesting. So he's talking about, again, 春酒, which is wine for springtime. So again, he's talking about a spring festival wine, right? And here he talks about 葡萄, which is grape. So this poem is specifically about grape wine. Here's a translation of the poem. So he's saying, looking out to the Han River, right, with its green color of a duck's head, just like newly made unfiltered grape wine. So this is very interesting. So he must be drinking some kind of white wine, I suppose, but it's showing green in color. And he goes on to say, if this river turns into spring wine, the leaves and sediments will build a mound. It will become a mountain. So, there's a bit of contrasting, talking about the river at the beginning and the mountain at the end, but this mountain is made of sediments from wine. That would be his ideal situation. This is his sort of fantasy to have a whole river full of grape wine to drink, right? So this is very interesting and very specifically telling us that in Tang Dynasty, poets like Li Bai was enjoying grape wine. And by this time, you may have noticed from Han Dynasty, where grape wine was very expensive and only enjoyed by the imperial circles. By the Tang Dynasty, grape wine was more widely available. So the scholar class, or even just the the general public, they were able to access grape wine, because at the time, Chang'an, which was the capital city of during the Tang Dynasty and present-day Xi'an, there were lots of merchants and traders who came along the Silk Road from Middle East, from other countries, and they would come to Chang'an to sell many merchandises, and one of the most popular product to sell was wine. Right? So I'm not sure what sort of wine would have that color of a green duck's head, but let's assume, maybe there's a bit of poetic license, but I think it will be some kind of a white wine, I suppose. And in the meantime, the Côte de Beaune, the Quarton Charlemagne appellation was founded, and it was gifted by the Roman Emperor Charlemagne to the Abbey. And they would grow grape wines there. And today, this region is famous for some of the finest Chardonnay wines in the world. And then onto Song Dynasty, again, a very much celebrated character, Su Shi. So Su Shi was also a great writer. He was a politician. He was a gourmand. He created some classic dishes in Chinese cuisine. For example, you might have had Dongpo Rou, which is a triple cooked pork belly. It's a very famous Chinese dish. So he made that. And he was also very into grape wine. So again, this particular poem celebrates the wine, the grape wine from Liangzhou. And in the Song Dynasty, people were very particular about using the right wares for the right wine. So he specifically noted the imported glassware. So South Seas is essentially to say things which are exotic, from beyond the China border, the south of the ocean. So these are imported glassware, which were used to serve his fine wine from Liangzhou. So again, rather interesting. And the poem is called The Old Glutton's Ode. So yes, they really were very, very discerned about service and about the type of wine and its provenance. Liangzhou Putao is particularly famous. And interestingly, at around the same time during Song Dynasty, that's when the Doomsday Book was compiled. And in fact, 42 vineyards were recorded in the Doomsday Book. I'm sure a lot of us know, the English wine industry is also having a good time at the moment, a revival, I suppose. And maybe it shouldn't be a surprise that English soils can make wine, because as far back as Doomsday's Book, there were 42 vineyards recorded already. Okay, so back to this concept of wine and health. Throughout history, wine has been associated with health in China. And in fact, it's most well put together in this book called 本草纲目. 本草纲目 was published in 1590, compiled by a very famous doctor called Li Shizhen. And in this book, he specifically mentioned grape wine, which can be made in 3 ways. And these 3 ways give us a really good glimpse into winemaking techniques in Chinese history. So he mentioned with grapes, you can naturally ferment it into wine. And that is how wine is made in Europe, right? So the European method is to let the juice of the grape just naturally ferment. But the second one is interesting. It's called fermentation with inducer. So by inducer, this is what how rice wine is made. Because rice and grains, they contain less sugar, so they need a bit more help to start the fermentation process. So when we make rice or grain wine, we add an inducer to kickstart the fermentation process. It's not quite the same as yeast. Normally, even when we talk about natural fermentation of wine, we would add yeast, but an inducer is more than just a yeast complex. It also includes certain type of bacteria, sort of fungal or even fermented rice, and also yeast as well. It's a more complex ingredient. And that is how we make grain wine. But he mentions that, in fact, a lot of people would be making grape wines also with this inducer as well. Yeah, I wonder what that tastes like, and I wonder if any Chinese winemakers would try it, because that would be quite interesting for us to replicate today and see how that would taste. If you're more familiar with Japanese sake, actually sake is essentially grain wine made with an inducer, and that technology, in fact, came from China to Korea and to Japan. So today, sake with the inducer, which they call koji, is perhaps more familiar to the international audience, but essentially it's the same technology that we use in China to make rice wine as well. And then he mentions distillation, which essentially is how brandy is made. So you first make a naturally fermented grape wine, and then through distillation, you get a higher alcohol spirit. Right, so distillation was certainly already popular during this time. So in the meantime, I'm in Stratford-upon-Avon right now. So in the meantime, during the Ming Dynasty, that's also the era of Shakespeare, and he was writing in Othello, "Good wine is a good familiar creature, if it be well used." Very well said. Okay, and then we go fast forward again to the last imperial dynasty of China. And I want to mention Kangxi Emperor. So he was probably one of the most illustrious emperors in the entire history of China. And he was very fascinated by European technology and arithmetic, astronomy, and sciences. So in his court, he employed some Jesuit French Jesuits to teach him about the European way of life and the sciences and mathematics. So there was a much more direct conversation between China and the West at this point. So Kangxi Emperor famously is a great Bordeaux drinker. So he fell ill at one point, and his one of the Jesuit missionary called Louis Lecomte, who was working at Kangxi's court, suggested to Kangxi that he should try to drink a glass of red wine with his meal every single day. And so Kangxi Emperor followed that advice, and he would drink a glass of claret every day. And he became the longest reigning emperor in Chinese history. So again, longevity and wine seems to be holding strong by the example of Kangxi Emperor. And also, I just want to quickly mention that, in fact, a lot of the wares that you will find in museums are actually related to wine. So, for example, bronzeware of China, a lot of that was actually produced to perform ritualistic functions in ancient China. So bronzeware and wine culture goes hand in hand in China. And you can argue that wine, in fact, propelled a lot of the technology and design in bronzeware making in China. So next time you go to a museum and see one of these, just notice, because a lot of them will be saying that it's a wine vessel. again, just a few more interesting vessels that were found with Persian influence. So that's things which came through the Silk Road, right? So these wine pitchers, and wine goblets with European figurines, they were found in northern China. And here you have a mural painting of a lady in waiting, holding a wine glass and a wine pitcher, again, of Persian influence. And I want to highlight this rather lovely wine cup. This is very specifically for grape wine. This looks almost a bit like, what we would have as a glass, really, these days, right? With a tall stem. And it's called a red in glaze, perhaps to hint to us that this is a cup for red wine. It's got that lovely red color, red in glaze as well. So this is a rather lovely object, and it's always been one of my dreams. I'm really hoping that in the future we can perhaps work with some museums to do maybe a Chinese wine cultural talk, because museums are rich picking grounds for wine wares of China, and maybe more people would be interested to know about that, because a lot of times we walk past these objects in the China section, not completely realizing how much wine had an influence on these objects. Okay, so now we're talking about modern history, right? So this is towards the end of the imperial dynasty, so Qing dynasty. Towards the end of Qing dynasty, there was a westernization movement whereby some Chinese pioneers wanted to learn about European technology, industrialization, and all these things that could propel China to be more aligned with this sort of industrial revolution that was happening in the West, right? So although it was short-lived as a movement, but what did materialized was the first industrialized Chinese winery. This was founded in 1892, called Changyu Pioneer Wine Company was founded. And then now we're fast forwarding to modern day China. Modern day China, we saw along with Changyu. So Changyu is still one of the largest wine companies today in China, but two more joined Changyu. So the big three, as it were. The big three includes Great Wall Wine Company and Dynasty Wine Company, and they were founded around 1980. And this was to coincide with the reform and opening up of China. So Dynasty was initially a joint venture, was a Sino-French joint venture. And Great Wall was actually tasked with making China's first dry white wine. So this is a rather interesting story. So China, so President Nixon visited China in 1972. And during a state banquet, baijiu, which is this really very strong Chinese grain liquor, was served. And Nixon made a joke about baijiu, going, "Oh, this is quite undrinkable." So Prime Minister Zhou Enlai said after that state banquet, he said, "We must make our own grape wine, because on state banquets, we must be able to serve grape wine, European style wine, to our international guests, because they don't have the taste for baijiu." Right? So after Prime Minister Zhou Enlai said this, Great Wall took it to heart and decided to launch the first dry white wine made from the Longyan grape, which is actually what we're tasting today. Essentially, we are tasting a Longyan white wine made by Great Wall, but the quality has improved many folds since then. Right. So 1979 was interesting. So the first dry white wine was made by Great Wall, and at the same time, the Special Economic Zone program was being rolled out as well. So here are just some lovely old photos of these pioneers, I suppose, of the Chinese wine industry, the modern Chinese wine industry. And in fact, Great Wall also made the first dry red wine as well. This was around between 79 and 84. So first came the dry white wine, and then came the dry red wine. So looking at China today, this is a map of wine regions in China, indicated by the green and red dots. So as you can see, we have vineyards all over the place in China now, which might surprise you. And the relative size of these green dots indicate the relative planting sizes of these vineyards. And the green dots indicate the European wine grape varieties. So they are still the predominant varieties being planted. The red dots are the more local wild Chinese grape varieties or hybrid varieties. So they may come online and become more commercially viable in future years. But at the moment, China is mainly making wine from European wine varieties. So looking at Great Wall more specifically, here are the main regions where Great Wall operates. So again, they are sort of at all the key wine regions, including Hebei, where they started, Hebei, Shacheng. They are also in Ningxia, which is now perhaps the most internationally well-known wine regions of China, in Xinjiang, in Shandong. So, they are at all the key regions. So Great Wall, you may know their parent company is COFCO. So we have a joke in China, in the playground, people would go, "Oh, my daddy is so-and-so." So Great Wall's daddy is COFCO, which is this massive Chinese company. Of course, you may know that they operate globally. Their assets is worth $70 billion, and their food and drinks business alone is worth around $20 billion annually, right? And Great Wall, if you meet people in Great Wall, they might give you these figures. They produce 1.5 million hectoliters of wine annually, 66 million bottles for export. Accumulated sales is 2 billion bottles, accounting for 12 billion renminbi of sales. And they would tell you, if you line up all the bottles they've sold, you can make a round trip from the Earth to the moon. So, very impressive figures. So today we're tasting these two wines, and later on I would like to invite Kevin to taste with me and maybe give us some of his impression of the two wines. So the first wine is from Hebei province, which is just west of Beijing. This grape variety is called Dragon Eye. So we do have a fruit also called Dragon Eye. It's a sort of popular around Southeast Asia, but this is nothing to do with the fruit. This is a grape variety called Dragon Eye, which you can see. It's a beautiful grape. It's a table grape as well, so you can eat it as well. It's very nice to eat. But Great Wall has discovered that it can make rather interesting, rather fine white wine as well. And the red wine is from Ningxia province. So Ningxia is middle north of China. It's inland continental climate, and it has its own appellation called Helan Mountain East appellation, which is an official Chinese wine appellation now. So Cabernet Sauvignon is the grape in the red wine. Cabernet Sauvignon is the most planted wine grape. So earlier, you saw all those green dots indicating European varieties being planted in China, and Cabernet Sauvignon accounts for the vast majority of that. I think around 70% in China. And China actually now has the world's largest planting area of Cabernet Sauvignon as well. Okay, so if you're interested in my book, I talk a lot more about wine regions, about various grape varieties, and local hybrid varieties as well. So why not drink your Chinese wine and read a little bit more about those as well. Yeah, so these two wines, I'd like to invite Kevin back to talk about this, but to me, I think these two wines are good food wines, because a lot of times we joke that it's almost impossible to choose wine for a Chinese banquet because, we don't eat one course at a time. You have a lot of food being thrown at you, or at the same time with different flavors. So usually you need to pick wines which are crowd pleasers, which are easy to go with a lot of different styles and a lot of different foods. And I think these two wines, what they do is they are made with eating in mind. I do consider them as food wines. But yeah, I think I will like to discuss that with Kevin a little bit more. I just want to very quickly mention that I also do a fortnightly free wine webinar called The Note of Mandarin. So the idea is to combine wine, Chinese language, and also Chinese culture together. So if you're interested in that, you're very welcome to join me on Sundays at 8 p.m. every other Sunday. And this is done in association with the Cambridge China Center. So you can look it up on their website. And a quick plug for my book. It's not just a book about wine, really. It's about wine and China. And if you find you want to understand a little bit more about Chinese culture and history, but maybe using wine as a sort of a protagonist, as a storyteller, as a hook, I suppose. This is a book trying to tell you about the story of China, but with wine as a running theme throughout. So yes, so I shall end there, and that's me on social media, or how to get in touch with me. And we also have a WeChat group if you'd like to join our WeChat group for the wine webinar club, then that's the QR code for it. So feel free to get in touch with me. And yeah, I'll be delighted to talk to you more about wine and China and anything else, really. Great. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen so I could have a chat with all of you and with Kevin to hear your thoughts about the wines.
Wow, that was fantastic. We've just traveled through centuries. Most histories bring us back a few hundred years, bring us back tens of years, but it's quite brilliant. It really is. And it does give us that sense of, that the wine culture in China is actually very important. It's not something that's just been made recently, and it's not just a new wine industry. There's something quite ancient and quite brilliant about it. That said, most of what we're going to drink in the glass is quite new. And yeah. I was fascinated by the spread of vineyards across the country.
Yeah.
Some of your vines need to be buried, it seems.
Yes, exactly.
I know they used to do that in Canada, but they don't seem to do it anymore. But you need to bury your vines.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, if you want to see it, I do have a picture of that. I can show you.
I presume it's because it's really, really, really cold.
Yeah, so this is how they bury the vines in winter.
A single vine.
Yeah, so in winter, they have to press the vines down on the ground and then put earth over it. So this, you can imagine, is very labor intensive and very costly to do as well. If you had to do this in England, we can't afford the wine. Could you imagine the labor cost of doing that in England? Luckily, they're not doing that here. But in North China, they have to do this twice a year because you have to bury it in winter and dig it up again.
Yeah, you have to take it back out again. Yeah. Back to the two wines. I always thought Long Yang, when I saw it on the label, was a blend. I didn't realize it was actually a vinifera.
Yes.
A grape variety all in its own right.
Yes, exactly. It's called Dragon Eye, but it's the name of the grape. So this grape is quite fascinating.
And this is typical.
Yeah, it's actually a European variety, but we don't know exactly where it came from. It's been growing in China for over 800 years. So it's fully adopted by China. We call it Longyan. We think it's our own grape, and we eat it, we make wine with it. So it's very much now considered a Chinese grape, although it is in theory a Vitis vinifera variety.
It must have come from somewhere. They'll find it.
Yeah, they'll do some DNA test. I'm sure they'll find it somewhere. But to date,
the label is great. It's simple. It's straightforward. It tells you what's going on. I love a label that it doesn't complicate life. It's modern. It's fit. That attracts your attention. When you put it into the glass, then it's lovely and clear. It's completely clear. The bouquet, yeah, you've got a really definite, distinctive fruit, and it's a very attractive bouquet. But it's not huge, it's not overpowering.
No,
it's just really pleasant. This is something where the food is actually going to help it, and both are going to go hand in hand rather than one trying to take over from the other. It's a gorgeous bouquet. It's really good, very interesting.
Yeah, I do find this wine, it's actually their entry point wine. This is meant to be accessible. It's meant to be a crowd pleaser. It's not complicated, but it's fresh, it's clean, which I like. It's very clean on the palate. It shows a bit of the varietal character, but it's it's got good freshness, acidity, makes your mouth water, makes you want to eat a bit of food with it, I suppose. I think it's a lovely wine.
It brings it back to one of the poems, that's for sure.
I particularly like this white because it's light. It's light to me. It's only 12% on the alcohol volume. It's quite easy to drink. It's drinkable. It's light, and then particularly if you have quite a good few glasses, you won't have a headache in the next morning.
Yeah.
Yeah, but when you have a wine that's going to actually match a food, you really have to make sure that, as you say, there's going to be a lot of different foods. You can't have the wine being very distinctively, very flavoursome. Otherwise, you have.
Yeah, exactly.
But that will work very well. What grapes are we going to see on bottles coming from China? Because you're very much a red wine drinking nation, aren't you?
At the moment, yes. So at the moment, 80%. So earlier it was even like 95% of wine drunk in China was was red.
What are the white grapes will we see?
White variety, as you say. Yeah. Okay, so at the moment, so Chardonnay and Riesling are quite popular. And Welsh Riesling, so Italian Riesling is also quite popular. But Longyan is, especially in that Hebei region, is
what we're going to see
improving all the time. And then also, interestingly, China makes some very lovely ice wine.
They do, don't they?
Yeah.
You actually have the whole ice wine region.
Yeah, very good. So northern provinces, Liaoning, for example, Jilin, that area, they make Vidal ice wines, and they are just delicious.
So they're very much copying the Canadian tradition.
Yeah, they are, unashamedly. They went to Canada and said, hey, we can do this. And, actually the Canadian wine regions have been very helpful and very, in the wine industry, what I love is that there's a lot of exchange of knowledge and ideas. So, a lot of foreign winemakers absolutely love to go to China and make wine, and a lot of Chinese winemakers have studied, in Europe in particular. So there's a lot of exchange of ideas, but then, this learning is two-way, because a lot of Western winemakers, when they land up in China, and they would say, oh my God, this rock or this soil, I have never seen in my entire life. These are very experienced winemakers, from famous estates. And they're like, we've only heard about this in textbooks and we've never seen this soil. And they're very excited to find that sort of different terroir to work with in China. So,
but you must get, I get excited when I go to soils and rocks. I have buckets of rocks and soils from vineyards.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's what's going to make Chinese wine unique. It's the
but
sort of one.
yeah, but that's a great thing. There is that great realization from the West. We're going over and finding things that are absolutely, completely new.
Yeah.
And different, and that's going to help everybody because
yes, exactly.
It's great. I was speaking on my podcast to the Laura Catina people or the Catina Zamata people from Argentina there this week, and they were telling us about that they found a vineyard. It was only 20 years ago. It's now one of the greatest vineyards in the world, and it's like 5,000 feet above sea level. They didn't get anything to grow, let alone ripen. But now it does. And they are making some of the best wines, without a shadow of a doubt, 100-point wines on a regular basis. Quite extraordinary from that vineyard. It's the Adriana vineyard. That's what you're going to find in China.
Yes.
You're going to find those regions, you're going to find those little spots, and you're going to then suddenly find it making the best wines in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I think there's so much potential in China. And for us as wine lovers, I think what is exciting is this new possibilities offered by the terrains of China. Chinese terrains are just fantastic from west to east. We have like Gobi Desert, mountain, Yellow River plains, and high mountains.
You mentioned the Yannan appellation. Is that something that's happening now? Where you're getting a distinct appellations being legal?
Yeah. So there are several appellations being set up now. So Ningxia, perhaps the most famous one, is Helan Mountain East, where this red wine comes from. This is from Helan Mountain East. But there are also other appellations like Penglai appellation, and you have the Loess Plateau, Huangtu Gaoyuan, right, is another region, which is very exciting, I think, as a wine terroir, Huangtu Gaoyuan. And Yunnan, it's called Shangri-La, Xiangge-Li-La, 产区, very poetic names. So that's all like snow peaks, snow mountains. And okay, well, not quite in the snow. You don't grow it in the snow, but it's surrounded by snow mountains and high altitude, basically, wines. And Penglai, obviously, by the ocean, you have that influence from the sea. So there are lots of very interesting soil and mountain and very.
Next, the red wine is a Cabernet Sauvignon, and you did mention that Cabernet Sauvignon is your most planted, but you're also putting more Cabernet Sauvignon into the ground than anyone else in the world has ever put into the ground.
Yeah, that's incredible.
And that's on a daily basis. It's just
what I love about the Chinese wine industry, it's combining this sort of Chinese tradition of doing things properly, because with wine, you need patience, right? You need planting, you need to plan decades ahead, because when you plant the vines, you can only get nice wines maybe about 7 to 10 years in. You're starting to produce interesting wines, and then you have to think about how climate change will impact your vine growth in the future. So the decision of planting something is not to be taken lightly. You have to have a very long-term view, right? So the wine industry in China is sort of a combination of this planning, forward-looking, patience, and all that sort of thing. But at the same time, it's also done at China speed, like Chinese speed. So you have like all these wineries being built in very short space of time. And they'll be producing wines in fairly impressive quantities and to a decent quality as well. And they're doing this in fairly rapid time as well, fairly impressive time frame as well. So
some of the new wineries are absolutely beautiful. Absolutely.
Yeah, they're really.
You mentioned Changyu. I actually did interview Lawrence Moser from the Changyu the winery on my podcast. It's a fascinating story, really, very, very interesting. But tell us more about this Great Wall Cabernet Sauvignon.
Yeah, so I think this comes from their Ningxia winery, and I think they actually produce a lot of this. This is one of their flagship wines, but this particular one you're tasting is catered for the export market. I think it's aged in a barrel for 12 to 18 months. And maybe 80% new barrels, something like that. So for me, again, the tannin is quite soft. So I think that's because Chinese winemakers do make wine that's good with food. You know.
About this screens, we need food. We need food.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. This is the thing. You drink this and you're like, oh, I would like to have my dinner now. You know.
It's also 2016, which got 5 years, so you can actually see that there is age in there. It has.
Yeah. So you're starting to get a bit of secondary, tertiary notes. You know, a bit of mocha dimension, as well as the fruit, which is quite nice and concentrated and fresh.
We actually we got some feedback from the audience already about this red. Yeah, let me read out. This Great Wall white red Cabernet Sauvignon is balanced. It is a strong and hint of a fruit. Excellent presentation. Very interesting.
Okay.
So
yeah,
it's great feedback already. So also I would like to ask our key guests here. Yeah. So what's your feedback so far? What do you think of the wine, the both wines so far, guys?
Really, very, very nice, very easy to drink, beautiful flavor, easy on the palate, and great to get the education with it. I have an indirect connection with the wine industry. My nephew in Dublin is a master of wine.
Who is your nephew?
Michael O'Connell, if you've come across him.
We know Mick O'Connell. Yes, so Mick O'Connell, we know very well, yeah.
In Neighbourhood Wines there, they've opened the new place in Leeson Street. But he adjudicated on a wine competition, I think, in Beijing or Shanghai at some point in time. So I have an indirect connection with the wine industry, and the wine this evening is absolutely beautiful. Thank you.
Oh, great. I'm pleased to hear.
Thank you, Michael. Come on, the rest of you must like it at all.
It's very nice. I think it's very smooth to drink as well, both the white and the red. It's very nice fruity aroma coming from it. If I can imagine it would very much enhance food eating as well at the same time. Strongly recommend it. Yeah, very impressed. Great. Thanks very much.
Next council meeting then, yeah?
Absolutely. Get everyone on.
I think the two wines are very nice, but the white wine is, if we had the food with it, and when I'm in China, when you can, the Chinese food with the wine, and the mix is fantastic. Where we're missing out. Okay, standalone is okay, but I think the mixture, what Kevin says and what you're saying, but that's where the real.
Pour the wine in, the poetry comes out. Come on.
That's it.
Yes.
It's not green color anyway.
Yeah.
I think it's very much a natural wine.
Yes, without filtering with lots of sediments to make a mountain, you know.
Everything went into that glass, and not yeah.
Yes.
Nothing wrong with that. Is there a natural wine movement in China?
A little bit. It's quite new and very niche at the moment. Not super commercial at the moment yet, but it's certainly there are a few, not a lot, a handful of them trying out orange wine and natural wine. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean they can be very interesting, but really organic and biodynamic will be bigger.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So there's already some biodynamic vineyards, and a lot of the Chinese vineyards, especially in the northwest, are organic because they have good condition. They don't need to. They don't have much disease and need to spray pesticides and things or herb or.
That's good, and you've got to shout that from the rooftops. You know, you have to tell everybody because that is a positive message.
Yeah. Because they are naturally, very dry. You can imagine near the Gobi Desert, it's very dry. Yeah. So no mildew or anything like that. So yeah.
And also, just now I received some WeChat photo from my contacts here, my contacts in the Cork. The Cork City Council. There you are. So she's sitting beside her fireworks, and then have a glass of wine in front of the PC. Enjoy that, saying that it's great event. So well done, guys. And also we have other comments there from the about the kind of the grape the have there is no longer exist in Europe. I presume that's in the comments or with the Longyan grape on the white.
Yeah, because Longyan, I think they haven't identified where it came from. And in fact, there was another type of grape found in Yunnan. So there's another interesting story. I'm sure you all know Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy, right? The luxury group. They have a vineyard in China called Aoyun. They make a wine called Aoyun in Yunnan. And one of the reasons why they initially picked Yunnan was because when they did these research around different regions in China, they found a really curious church in Yunnan. It's like a church, but then with a pagoda-like roof. So it's still a Chinese style church. And in the churchyard, they found a vineyard. And there was a type of grape which is again lost in Europe, but they found it in China. So that's why they thought, maybe this area is suitable for growing vines. So they did some soil research, and then eventually they actually decided to build to make wine in Yunnan. Yeah. So again, just shows you sometimes a old European varieties actually would survive in a completely different land and thrive or develop different characters. And yeah, so Longyan we're still awaiting to see where it actually came from.
There you go. What would be the best food to pair the wines with? It's a good question because I mean, at this stage, you're going to, I mean, really, you can go from the Western side of things, but it really should be from the Chinese side as to what they pair with. But of course, you're going to get a very big, long answer.
Looking forward to it.
So I actually recently for Chinese New Year did a couple of talks around food and wine matching. So there's a few rules which are helpful when you're considering food and wine matching, especially if we're talking about Chinese food. One thing is that generally with Chinese food, it's better to consider what cuisine type you are dealing with, right? Because usually when we eat, we have so many dishes. It's less important to get too bogged down with, I'm having beef or I'm having chicken. What happens if there's vegetable and rice and fish and meat? It's just too daunting. But if you identify the cuisine type, there are underlying themes with the cuisine type. For example, Sichuan cuisine, you know it's going to be hot and numbing, right? So if you have hot and numbing, what you want to avoid is alcoholic wine or tannic wine. You want something maybe a bit like this, very clean, very fresh, with good acidity. You can even go with slightly sweeter wine, off-dry Riesling, for example, something that offers a bit of acidity and sweetness, and low alcohol, low tannin is what you want with hot and spicy food. So with that cuisine type, you already know, certain big, bold Bordeaux wine are not suitable, right? And then if you're talking about Cantonese food, so in Cantonese food, generally, what they do is they talk about this smooth mouthfeel. So Cantonese food tend to have sauces which make the whole dish very smooth in your mouth, very silky, So again, in that case, you want a wine that is also smooth and medium bodied. There's no point having a wine that has grainy, sandy tannins, because that would completely defeat what the food is trying to achieve for you, right? So again, with that cuisine type, and then with dim sum, what I would suggest, if you're having dim sum, I would also go with things like with a bit of acidity, like rosé, like maybe this Longyan, or even sparkling wine. I find work rather nicely with dim sum because dim sums are quite light in weight. So sometimes is probably enough to say, okay, am I having a light or heavy dish? If it's a light dish, you can go with a fairly light, bubbly wine. In fact, if you're having heavy dishes, big meat, big sauces, you want a more full-bodied wine, so that it can still offer some interest when you're eating the food. Yeah, so I think matching wine to cuisine type is perhaps an easier exercise than talking about very individual dishes, yeah, so that's just my general rule of thumb, I suppose. Yeah, because it's important. Yeah, with Chinese food, there's so much, you have to pay attention to sauces, to the garnish, if there's spring onion or coriander, then you need a wine that's aromatic, to go with the garnish as well. So all these little details are more important than whether you're having beef or chicken or fish. Yeah.
Great. And then, and Olga, what do you think of the wine yourself?
Yes, just I said, I'm not a wine drinker, but it's really easy to me. I tried we called it Eve, the New Year's Eve. This is the most important, Still, yeah. I was in Ireland alone myself. So I still opened that bottle to drink to my own, saying Happy New Year. Yes, and yes, it's rather easy for me. I think it's good. Yes, so I kept it for. Now this is the third day. Yes, I kept it in the fridge, and I think I will continue to drink a little bit to finish in 1 or 2 days in the bottle. This is it's a big task for me, but I try to finish this. Yes, really enjoy. Thank you, Jenny. I think that your presentation is very, very interesting, and it's knowledgeable. Yeah, it's knowledgeable. Even for me, I'm Chinese. I didn't imagine your presentation would relate the wine with the culture, with the history, and with even the poems and the poets. So I think it's really interesting. I think maybe we can do it next time. Why not? I mentioned you talk about we can explore to work with the museums.
Yeah, I think that would be super.
Well, why not? Yeah. We do next time. Yes, we can ask the museum to help to bring some vessels.
Yeah.
The Asian one. We have a virtual tour of the bronze vessels. Mm-hmm. Yes, and with your presentation and the vessels virtual tour, I think it will be much more great. Yes.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Yeah, I would absolutely love to do that. It's sort of an idea I had, but yeah.
I really think we can do more to introduce Chinese wine and Chinese culture and the Chinese poets and poems to all the people in the world. That's very brilliant. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Madam Wang. It's a really great pleasure for me. Yeah.
Excellent, Madam Wang. So yeah, we will. ICSATA will connect you after the events to make sure that will happen. So to benefits to everybody. So even like you said, even for myself as a Chinese, I learned something a lot new today from Janet. So do we, our other Chinese colleagues. What do you think? Our media guy, Xiaoming, what do you think yourself as a media person?
First of all, it's a very good presentation from Janet. It's brilliant. It's all about history, which we never heard about before, about the poem, about the wine history in China. That was fascinating. And for the wine himself, I think it's for me, it's very soft and it's a bit sweetener than the European one, which we buy in Ireland, and then it's not that dry, so it's really easy to take. And then I think this one is more suitable for Chinese tongue and Chinese stomach.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
So that's brilliant. It's impressed me as well. And then you can smell the fruit from when you started drinking. So it's brilliant.
Great,
Thank you
great.
so much.
Fantastic.
It's all about it. It is all about having an immediate impression, and if the immediate impression is good, you're going to continue and enjoy it, and that's what these do. I mean, as I say, from the label through to the first appearance in the glass, you're hooked.
Yeah, it has
The future is very, very bright.
Yeah.
And also, what do you think, our technical guy, Yang Dan, from a technical perspective, expert perspective?
Thank you, Mr. Chen, for inviting me to join this activity. It's amazing, and I'm also a Chinese. Hello. I know that Great Wall is a very top brand in China, and we Chinese people like the red wine of Great Wall very, very much. Today, I tasted again in Ireland. It's amazing, especially when I listen to Janet Wang introduction about the Chinese wine. I'm very confident that the Chinese red wine can buy globally and sell globally. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think so. I think China is a very exciting region to watch as a producer, because the wines are starting to show great quality and offer some interest. And this, this is Great Wall's sort of accessible range. They also have others where they use more interest sort of blends and niche varieties, etc. So they are starting to push the boat out and do quite creative things as well. So there are more to try. I'm sure if we're gonna continue and do more events in the future, we can try more wines, different styles, and maybe with some food and with some bronze vessels, etc., and poetry reading. Who knows? We can do lots of things. Yeah.
What I might say, Wen, is here in the Munster Technological University that covers Cork and Kerry, we have a very vibrant tourism and hospitality department.
Yeah.
Where we have students who are training in terms of to understand wines, all sorts of beverages, food, and so on. So maybe we can organize a guest lecture where we get some education about Chinese wines coming into these people who will be the professionals in the tourism and hospitality industry in this country and in many other countries for the future. And it would be a lovely connection to make from this evening's event to connect Chinese culture with Irish culture in the tourism and hospitality area, if this is a possibility.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
That sounds wonderful. Yeah, that sounds a great idea.
Absolutely, Michael. Yeah, so that's a great proposition. So let's make that happen. And then indeed, today is the first, I believe, is the first ever Chinese wine and culture, Chinese culture and Chinese wine sessions in Ireland. And then indeed for the Great Wall wines themselves, it's the first time to appear in the Irish market. Yes. So I'm delighted, and also I believe everybody's delighted to see this type of events happening. So for sure, like Michael and like Madame Wang suggested, we will ensure to continue the wine tasting and then be associated with the culture events happening in the next in the coming days. And hopefully, once the virus is over, so we can invite Janet herself in person to be in Ireland, to be in Dublin, to be in Cork, to present and together with everybody, and for sure.
I would love to do that. Yeah.
Well, in the very short and I suppose immediate term, Janet has agreed to be a guest on my own Kevin Eacock's Wine podcast. So we will keep the message going through on the airs, and that's just the way it has to go. Very good point to include, Michael, the future of the hospitality trade, because we have a great history of producing some very, very fine hospitality managers right across the food and beverage section and throughout the world. There's no doubt at all. We're constantly at it, and of course, our own restaurant sector in Ireland has been growing. The recent Michelin stars shows how successful we actually have become, and we have developed a cuisine where we will be looking for other wines from outside of Europe. There's no doubt at all.
Fantastic. Yeah,
Excellent.
I'm looking forward to making all these connections and new event ideas, new ideas. It's brilliant. For me, it's a privilege to be here tonight. And yeah, it's a great pleasure. And I'm so looking forward to following up some of these ideas afterwards. Yeah, so it'll be great. Thank you. Thank you, Wen, for organizing. It's a fantastic idea.
You're welcome. You're welcome, Janet. Thanks again for your great contribution and presentation. And then thank you, Kevin, again for your moderating, professional moderator. So and thank you all guys for your great participation today, and then your great input today as well. It's a great virtual wine tasting round. Now I think we are towards the end of the session. So again, thank you all for your participation this evening, and also the audience here tonight as well. I hope you all enjoyed the session. So at least finally, again, happy Chinese New Year. So hopefully we will see you very soon. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Let's Happy New Year. Let's raise our glasses and then to have a last toast. Ganbei.
Ganbei. Or you can ganbei if you wish.
I will do my ganbei only.
I will finish this evening tonight. Yes.
Finish tonight. Okay.
So, ganbei, everybody. Cheers. In Irish called the sláinte.
One question. Where can get this wine in Dublin to buy or for sale?
Oh, so yes, good questions, Madame Wang. So now the both wines are available to buy in the Asian market, 亚洲行.
That's great.
Both online or in their retail stores. So yeah, feel free to get one if you're around.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again.
Thanks,
again, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.